Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. So I want to address head-on kind of what I've been alluding to the last couple days. This groundswell of people who are coming out saying, essentially, Jordan didn't regress. If you think he did, you're stupid. You don't know how to watch tape. Whatever the case may be. Let me just go through a couple of the things that I've been seeing. So first of all, and I don't know if this is exactly what started it or what, but Matt LaFleur was asked about it. We went over it, and he kind of went through, did he really regress? We had other issues, and it's a fair thing to say. Essentially, let's look at the full picture. But then Ian Rappaport puts out an article at NFL.com. Packers Matt LaFleur dismisses narrative that quarterback Jordan Love regressed. He put a quote, what is a step back is what I'd ask. To be fair, that's not exactly, those two things are not the same. Saying, what do you mean? I need you to clarify before I'll tell you whether or not I even think he did regress or why he regressed, is different than saying he dismissed the idea that he did regress. This is the same coach, by the way, that said he needs to get back to the fundamentals and all that kind of stuff. So, So there were a couple things that came off of the Ian Rappaport thing. So you got Matt LaFleur, and then Ian Rappaport does something, and then you've got a couple things. So Kurt Benkert, he quote tweeted it and said, Jordan Love was a top 5 quarterback and a lot of key statistics that actually track how he performed. Most mainstream statistics only track results of the play. The amount of passes dropped completely changed the public perception that otherwise wasn't taken into account. Turn on the film, Jordan balled out last year. Which is funny because he starts off by talking about looking at statistics and then says turn on the film. He also doesn't provide the statistics, so that doesn't really help. He just kind of says random stuff and throws it out there. I don't like that. You want to make a point, then actually make the point. I'll provide some myself, because we're going to look at the good and the bad here, but I don't like this incoherent nonsense. Warren Sharp put this out. This was actually before this all happened, but it's worth noting, and it kind of started a buzz, so we'll add it in here, and plus we're going to talk about Warren Sharp in a minute. He says, highest percentage of receiver error causing incompletions. Now, I don't know what this metric is. Intuitively I do, but I don't know. There's obviously drops, and then there's, you slip and fell, and then whatever. It had the Green Bay Packers, not surprisingly, number 1. But then he goes on to say, among 103 players with over 60 targets, Jaden Reed ranked 103rd and Dontavian Wicks ranked 102nd. NFL average was 5.3% of incompletions due to receiver error. Jaden Reed ranked 103rd of 103 qualifying players, 14.7%, nearly 3 times the NFL average. Dontavian Wicks was 102nd out of 103 players, 13.2%, the top 2 worst receivers in receiver error. Again, I don't know exactly where this is all coming from. Obviously, we had drop issues. Dontavian Wicks especially was problematic. Jaden Reed also was problematic. And I guess it doesn't make that big of a difference because if you look at drop percentage, Dontavian Wicks is number 1, Jaden Reed is 5th. So I don't know what little tweaks this makes to put Jaden Reed all the way up above Dontavian Wicks. But for whatever it's worth, there's that. Here is what Warren Sharp said. And this is all good information. It's all very compelling and all that stuff. Warren Sharp, quote tweeting Ian Rappaport's thing about Matt LaFleur, says, after spending the entire weekend researching and writing about the Packers' 2024 season, I 100% disagree with this. On early downs, among 46 quarterbacks, Love ranked 4th in yards per attempt, 5th in EPA per attempt, and 8th in success. Now, that immediately annoys me because there are 600,000 different statistics. Why are you just picking these 3? Maybe if it didn't have yards per attempt in there, you could look at it and say, okay, so these are maybe what he thinks are the best 2, EPA per attempt and success rate. Yards per attempt? Who gives a crap about yards per attempt? What a stupid metric. I don't know. Maybe he does think it's the top 3 metrics. I wouldn't think yards per attempt is in the top 5, certainly. I don't know if it's in the top 10. But anyways, He says, despite being injured / playing through injury half the year. Then on third down, it says on third and fourth downs, Jordan Love lost 28.2 EPA due to receiver errors. That's what we just talked about. That's the most EPA lost for any quarterback since 2020, which we could largely just say he was let down by his receivers more than any quarterback since 2020, according to this metric, which is pretty crazy if you think about it, because we're over here talking about, do we have 3 or 4 number one receivers? And Warren Sharp's like, this is the worst group of receivers that the NFL has seen in 5 years. Again, how, good of a metric this is, I don't know. It just popped up out of nowhere, but we'll roll with it. On all downs, the Packers receivers led the NFL in errors, which caused incompletions, and the Packers played the 6th toughest schedule on pass defense last year. So you can downplay his counting stats if you want, but what he battled, both externally from opponents and internally from injuries and his receivers, to lead his team to 11-6 is encouraging in my opinion, not disappointing. I think that's all perfectly fair. It's all perfectly fair up to a certain point, right? What is the point that it doesn't get us all the way home for? Did Jordan play good? Well, he was injured. Okay, but did he play well? Well, his receivers kept dropping passes. Okay, but did he play well? Well, they were 11-6 despite him being injured and having... Okay, but did he throw the ball well? Well, just put all those things together. Like I said, no, I don't want to put it together. I want you to tell me specifically. I don't want to beat around the bush and try to interpret through all these weird lenses. I understand the Packers would have been better if the Packers receivers were better. I understand Jordan would have played better if he wasn't injured. I'm asking you a very simple and specific question. Did Jordan Love do a good job throwing the football consistently last year? Yes or no? Well, he was 4th in yards per attempt. Okay, that doesn't really help. He's 5th in EPA per attempt. Doesn't really help. It kind of does. Look, these are fine quarterback stats, but they're not completely isolated quarterback stats. Good offensive line. You got guys that catch the ball. You got the coach that's calling the plays. All right, these things also factor into things like EPA and success and yards per attempt. Can we in any way isolate Jordan Love to determine how good of a job he did throwing the ball? Now, I have been saying for a while that I will grant that he was injured and that caused some problems, and I will grant that the wide receivers dropped passes, all of that. Although, as I've said, I do think a lot of the drops came from the fact that he was throwing very inaccurately, and that the more inaccuracy you have in the quarterback, the more drops you're going to have from your receivers. I don't think these things happen in a vacuum. But yeah, let's go through some of the positive stuff. Jordan Love, looking at PFF here, we'll start with PFF, was 6th in yards per attempt, for whatever that's worth. Going over to Pro Football Reference, he was 6th in touchdown percentage, 4th in yards per completion, 5th in QBR, 5th in adjusted net yards per attempt, which is a good metric, 4th in net yards per attempt. These are all positive, but not everything is positive. His PFF grade, which again is a film grade, it's guys turning on the tape and watching and saying, did he do a good job? He ranked 20th last year. His PFF passing grade ranked 18th. Big time throw percentage, which doesn't just mean deep passing. It's talking about completing difficult throws. Doesn't even have to be caught. It's just an accurate throw that is a difficult throw to make. He ranked 28th, tied with Justin Fields. Turnover-worthy plays. The rate at which he threw passes that coulda, woulda, shoulda been turned over. He ranked 24th. Is not good. Adjusted completion percentage. Guess what that metric does? It doesn't count drops. Wouldn't this be the easiest way to do it? Rather than saying, look at all the drops, therefore he's good, why don't we look at how accurate he was when you don't include drops? Was he then top 10? Was he top 15 or top 20? No, he ranked 25th in adjusted completion percentage. NFL passer rating, he ranked 20th. Back to Pro Football Reference. Interception percentage, he ranked 24th. Bad throw percentage, he ranked 29th. As in, if you're number one, you have the lowest percentage of bad throws. He was 29th. 18.2% of his throws were considered bad throws, tied with Cooper Rush. On target passes, he ranks 29th. 73.2% of his passes were on target. One spot ahead of Caleb Williams. So let's not play this stupid game. Did the receivers let him down? Yes. Did the offensive line let him down? No. Did Matt LaFleur let him down? I don't think so. Did he also play poorly? Yes. And the fact that you go on social media and people, they'll show one throw and be like, oh, and people think he regressed. You're so stupid. Stop doing that. Every bad quarterback in the NFL has good throws. Stop doing that. Or putting together highlight reels of drops and being like, well, this is why. That doesn't prove anything other than on that play, that person dropped the ball. It's all it does. It doesn't tell me anything. And so the fact of the matter is everybody acknowledges that Jordan Love regressed. Everybody. The question is, do the injuries and external factors like wide receiver, coach, offensive line, turf, whatever you want to blame it on, does that account for at least 100% of his regression? That's the question. And my answer is no. Well, actually, it's not necessarily. Remove the injury, and my answer is no. My only question is, does the injury make up the rest? And I'm not including like when he actually didn't play, because when he didn't play, that makes up for the regression in like his total yards and touchdowns and all that stuff. And the drops account for the incompletions that should have been caught and the yards that go along with that. Okay, so we all agree that there was regression. You could say you don't, but look at the numbers. Did he throw less yards and less touchdowns? Yes. Okay, so we're on the same page. He regressed. And we agree that part of it is due because of the fact that he missed games, and part of it is due because of how much worse the wide receivers played. So we're on the same page up to this point. He did regress, and a certain percentage of that is due to these factors. The only question I have is, does the injury make up the rest of that regression? And I don't know the answer to that. I certainly hope so. I know he can be a good quarterback. I know he's done it. I know he's looking good right now. We'll just have to see. But I don't want to play this stupid game where we pretend that last year didn't happen and that he was actually just as good as he was 2 years ago. Bull crap. It's not even close. It's not even close. Let's just stop it. Oh, no, he was actually elite. It was just drops. No, it wasn't. It's very easy to look into that and see if that's the reality. Oh, guess what? It's not. Jordan has to be better. He doesn't need to be top 3 in accuracy or all that, but he does need to be better. And part of the wide receivers improving is Jordan improving. If you want less drops, throw better balls. That's just a reality that applies to every quarterback. It applies to every receiver. Whatever your drop percentage is, your base drop percentage, it will go down with more accurate quarterbacks and up with less accurate quarterbacks. That's not really a debatable thing. And when I can see that Jordan Love was one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks, not saying that accounts for all of the drop issues, because it doesn't, but pretending it accounts for none is also a little silly. Because we would come on here every single week and we'd argue back and forth, me and you, about who was more to blame. Should he have caught it or should it have been thrown better? Well, that's not Jordan's fault. He should have caught that. Okay, should have caught it. Also kind of Jordan's fault. Maybe not 100%, but a part of it, yeah. I think he would have caught it if it was better placed ball. And it wasn't a better placed ball. And it was happening all year. And it wasn't happening in 2023 all year. I know, because I was there. And I've had this show the entire time. And we had the arguments all through 2024 and not in 2023. Alrighty, with that, why don't we go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back. All right, I think what we're going to do for today, this may be kind of the path that we go in the dead period. I'm not really sure. It depends how much stuff we got. Might be kind of going with two-parters here. So I'm going to kick it over to the chat, the voicemails, and we'll take a couple calls, and then we'll get up out of here.
Yo, Ryan, it's your Uncle Rico.
Yo.
It's Monday. What day is it? Monday the 2nd, I think. I think it's the 2nd of June. I'm finally listening to After Dark from Memorial Day, so I'm a little behind.
Good.
Anyways, I just wanted to present this scenario, and yeah, just because you're like saying that I don't think this team in the playoff scenarios, I don't think this third team who snuck in the playoffs is ever going to beat out this other team. But what about a scenario, Ryan? And you probably all went over this because it's been a week, right? But what about a scenario like the team that just barely sneaks in? Like all these crazy things have to happen for this team to get into the playoffs. This team has to lose, and that team has to lose, and this team has to tie, and that team has to. All these crazy things, in this worst team, I mean, not maybe the worst team, the team with this terrible record sneaks into the playoffs, and everybody's bent out of shape about it. But that team that just snuck into the playoffs because they won their last however many games, and they lost like the first 6 games of the season or whatever because their quarterback was messed up, and their quarterback came back, and he's getting better and better, and every week they're getting better and better because they're gelling, and their quarterback is, his knee was blown out, and every week he's playing better and better, and they barely, like I said, by the skin of their teeth get into the playoffs, and they just start knocking teams off the board, and they end up winning the Super Bowl. What about that scenario? Sure, you've discussed it already. It's a beautiful scenario. It could happen. I love this scenario. It's very exciting. It's very American NFL. It's oh God, I'm getting weepy. All right, love y'all. Rico out.
And what about the scenario where a team goes 8-0 and then their entire team gets wiped out and they have to forfeit all the rest of their games and they go 0-9 the end of the season, and then they end up getting into the playoffs? What about that scenario? Wouldn't that be crazy?
Hey, Ryan, TJ from Alabama. Just calling in, thinking about some NFC North type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Random thoughts. I will start with Minnesota Vikings. I think it's great that Kwesi Alfalfa Romero has been re-signed or got an extension. Because
Romero.
That guy kind of inherited Justin Jefferson, made a good choice, and Kevin McConnell. Other than that, he's kind of sucked. So.
Yep.
I'm kind of happy he's continuing on. As far as the Detroit Lions are concerned, Ragnow retiring, I don't think that's nothing.
Right.
Clearly, Detroit has had a borderline or an elite offensive line for the last 3 years or so. And while I don't think because they lose Ragnow, they're going to go from elite to suck. But if they just go from elite to kind of good, that makes a difference.
Yep.
Then we go to Chicago. Chicago, the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you very much, Chicago. But I think it's funny that the Illinois legislature has not passed any of the bills for the stadium, so the stadium just clown car effort for the stadium just keeps going, so that's pretty cool. I think that
it's so funny.
The Caleb Williams' dad saying, this is where quarterbacks go to die. I think on the surface, that truly is a nothing burger. That concept that they had that conversation before he went to Chicago and yada, yada, yada. Hey, there's nothing, no big deal there. However, what is a big deal is that the fact that quarterbacks go to Chicago to die, that's like a true statement. That is a true thing, is a real thing. And I'm sure Ben Johnson is going to do everything in his power because I'm sure he's an egotistical son of a gun, that he's going to do everything in his power just to have Caleb Williams pass for 4,000 yards, even if it's, kind of detrimental. But the fact that he said it, the fact that he wanted to go someplace else, that's a nothing burger. It doesn't matter. But the fact that he didn't want to do that because it is where quarterbacks go to die, that is a something burger, and I find that hilarious. All right, that's it. Go. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that I'd call it necessarily a nothing burger just because of it's potentially a nothing burger, but does Caleb want to be there? Like I said before, the fact that we're all pretending that it's over now. I mean, if he and his dad are looking at Chicago saying anywhere but Chicago, because like you said, it's true that is where quarterbacks go to die, and he had a horrible first season. He had wide receivers giving up on him. He's not happy. He may still not want to be there, and the fact that he said he doesn't want to be there might rub some of the players the wrong way. Just the simple fact that his dad said it means his dad's kind of a problem, which is a problem. But again, it may be nothing. It's possible Ben Johnson came in. Caleb is just having the time of his life. He's super motivated. The crew is motivated, and Ben Johnson's got these guys up and running, and we've moved on from that. But I think there's a distinct possibility that not only is it a lingering issue where, Caleb and his dad are furious that he ended up in Chicago and he's pretending that he's all happy about it, but there's also some fallout and repercussions as far as what that could mean for the rest of the team and the coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. I didn't look into it yet. I have the article saved for, we'll talk about it another time, but I saw an article saying Ben Johnson has been working with Caleb on his body language. That's the kind of stuff that, we'll see what it means, but you typically don't have to worry or work on with a guy. And when you, again, couple that with he doesn't want to be there, he's got a bad attitude, he's a drama queen, all that stuff. I'm just saying. I completely agree about Frank Ragnow in Detroit. That is not a minor thing. This is a team that's built, the offense is built on the offensive line. It works from the inside out. You build this big, monstrous offensive line. You run the ball extremely well and are very imposing, and then you build the passing game off of that. You see Chicago trying to build that. You see Green Bay trying to build that. I think you're seeing Minnesota trying to build that. Like I said, everybody thinks that everyone wants to be like Minnesota. I think a lot of people want to be like Detroit. You could say it's the same thing, fine, but I think that Green Bay is looking specifically at their rivals to the east and are trying to model a little bit after that. And, you lose Ben Johnson, who's kind of the architect of that, and you lose your center as everybody else in the division is getting better in those areas. And, they did draft a guy in the second round and they got a guy in the fifth round or whatever. We'll see. Maybe they get super lucky and don't miss a beat. But, no, I agree. They're kind of in a point. Usually I'm coming from the standpoint of you're just as good as you were last year until you prove you weren't. I'll give you that respect. But they were so good, it's going to be hard to repeat that, number one. Number two, you lost your coordinator, so you kind of have to prove that that's not a problem. Number three, your offensive line, which built your offense, is starting to fall apart. So there's some stuff you got to prove a little bit here.
Hey, Ryan, Steve up in Alaska. How's it going?
Good.
Just kind of heard some of the news about Ragnow retiring.
Yeah, man.
So the Lions' offensive line is going to be potentially putting out a rookie for their center.
Exactly.
Man, that first game of the season's potentially taking on a different view.
Yeah, sure.
If their offensive line is trying to settle itself and figure itself out, and their very first game action is against us in our house, that game gets a little...
To be fair, we might have Morgan and Belton on our offensive line, which is kind of like two rookies in a way. So, but still, yeah, absolutely, we need to frickin' get after that guy's throat.
A little bit nicer looking.
Yep.
So, yeah, I just want to call in and say that, the schedule changes, and this is the whole thing with the NFL. A few weeks ago, we look at the schedule, man, that first game.
Yep, exactly.
But then the Lions are already taking hits. We haven't even gotten to training camp and they're taking hits. So, yeah, that's all I want to say. I'm going to let it go. It's late for me. I'm going to go in, eat some dinner, and get some rest, and go to work tomorrow. Talk to y'all later. Go Pack.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, even in the off season, that we know that things change. By week 5 or 6, you look back and go, "Oh, we thought that was going to be tougher. Turns out maybe not." And then even that may change. Later it's "Oh, no, never mind. They're actually good again." But even in the off season, you have crazy stuff like this happening. We're going to have injuries crop up. Hopefully not to the Packers, but there's going to be stuff happening in training camp. This guy went down. This guy's going to be out. That week 1 line might be moving. I can't imagine Ragnow moved the Packers line any, but it would be interesting to kind of revisit that and see just kind of how that's going.
Ryan, how the heck are ya?
What's up?
Nico from Ho. I know. So you've never seen a tornado. To be honest,
No.
That's probably a good thing. because I got a tornado story for you. I
Okay.
kind of two, but I'm bored. There's not a lot of football to talk about, so we're gonna hit it up. So in the early 2000s or late 90s, I worked at a church, and we took our teenagers. We lived in Northwest Florida. We took a bunch of teenagers down to Pensacola for something, and on the way back, it was a nice day. I mean, it was hot, you know how it is. But it was a nice day. It wasn't horrible. There's no sun, or there's no rain or nothing. But on the way back, and it was already nighttime. And you've been in Florida. You've been to the South where it goes from sunny and nice to, oh my gosh, there is a
Deluge.
demon black cloud above us
Yeah.
that wants to kill us. If you've been in the South,
Florida rain is weird, man. Like it's just you're driving and all of a sudden it is, it goes from 80 and sunny and fine to downpour where nobody can see and everybody turns their freaking hazards on and it's like, oh, this is horrible. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, okay, that's done. Like, the heck was that? Usually out here it's like there's a slow drizzle and then that turns into a little bit of harder rain and then a little bit harder and it could rain for hours. Sometimes not, whatever. But yeah, it's a weird, like, just it's rain in the South is just like God sneezing. It's just a big hot chew. Blasts you and then it's done. Like, oh, all right, thank you, I guess.
So that happened, but at nighttime, so you couldn't tell. So I'm driving this Econoline van with like 20, probably more, teenagers in there, and we're going up this road, and all of a sudden, it started raining so hard that I couldn't see the front of the van. That's how, and the front of the van was a few inches away from my dashboard.
Sure.
So it was dumping. I'd never seen it rain that hard. And then we started getting hit by gusts of wind, and that was cool. And by cool, I mean scary as crap, because I thought the van was going to blow over.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, it's in the 90s, so there's no internet. There's no, there's a storm coming. There's just bang, it happened. And then at one point in time, I actually had to slow down. I didn't know where I was on the road, and I just went to the right until I could feel my passenger side tires go off the road, and I just stopped. Because I didn't know if I was going to hit a culvert or what, because you couldn't see. And then around that time, a branch from a pine tree hit the side of the van and just stuck to the van from the wind. And when it hit, it was probably an inch and a half in diameter, maybe 10 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of loud and scared the crap out of all the kids. And you know how teenagers are. They start screaming. It's horrible. And then it just, boom, died down. I could see the rain stopped. We drove home, found out that night that there was a tornado that had went through a little unincorporated area called Rome. I was like, ow, scary. Then my other story, so technically I didn't see it, but I felt it. Hang on.
Part 2.
And it was scary as crap. That's me again. So the second story was, I grew up in Southern California. We had no tornadoes. I don't know if you know this. Not a lot of tornadoes hit the coast of California.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in Bruton, Alabama, and I had to go to Kmart, which we call Kmart, because,
There you go. Good one.
And so I went in there, and you could tell there was like a weather front moving in, but it's just happens every day. So you just continue doing what you're doing. I go into the Kmart, and as I come out, it was incredibly windy. In fact, fortunately, the parking lot was almost empty because most people stayed at home, unlike me. I saw one of those places you park the shopping cart,
Mm-hmm.
and this was probably maybe 7 feet wide, 15, 20 feet long, and they have it's like a little tiny metal cage, and on one side there's like a big, huge, like a backboard. Put your shopping carts here. Well, that thing was scooting across the parking lot at a good 20 miles an hour, and I was like, oh my, that's crazy. And the weather looked really bad. And then all of a sudden I heard a growl. I heard something go like, it was deeper and louder and scarier, and it came from up in the air. I'm not scared easily, The only thing that scares me is animals in the wild. I was snorkeling one time and a humongous, sea lion came up to me. It was growling, kind of freaked me out. I've had other encounters with big animals in the woods. That's how I get scared. I was terrified by that sound. My hairs at the time I had in the back of my neck stood up. I think I even peed a little. And this lady said next to me, who was clearly a local, she goes, "Oh yeah, them hurricanes, they growl sometimes, or them tornadoes, they growl sometimes." And I was like, okay, I can understand how 1,000 years ago some indigenous people, if they heard something like maybe they beat someone up for stealing, and then all of a sudden a tornado growled, they'd be like, "Oh, we pissed off some creature in the air."
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's ever heard a tornado growl. It's scary as crap. Definitely the scariest thing I've ever. I've been in car crashes. I've had some crap happen. Never as scared as that. Whew. Anyways, I'm kind of looking around now. Anyways, hey, go Pack Go, and I'm.
Well, I don't know what to do with that. Sorry, you peed a little. But no, I have not. I've not seen a tornado. It's actually really surprising that I haven't. Not because there's a billion out here necessarily. I mean, there kind of are, but the amount of times there's been a tornado like a town over from me, lots of times. But the amount of times I've stood outside looking in the direction of where the supposed tornado is, waiting for it to cross my path and seen nothing. Like dozens of times. It's right over there somewhere and it's heading this way. Like, sweet, where is it? I'm looking for it. I'm that dude who's going to stand outside and wait for it. It's not there. It never, ever comes. Tornadoes are freaking scary to me, dude. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Goodbye.